Yeah, John Robb here, interviewing Christian Das Valor Khan. So, Valor, what I'm first interested in is you're a very eloquent musician, a musician who thinks way beyond the song. And I'm interested what you think the role of a musician actually is these days, in 2023.
I can't speak for other people. I mean, all I know is that I've had people that I've admired throughout my life. I felt that other than just performing music and enjoying music, my my duty is to at least give my artist interpretation of how I see the world, which is rather grim.
Mm. In what kind of way? I mean, I've read a lot of stuff about you, and you see, a mixture of some things that what some people call conspiracy, some people say very dark view humanity. Maybe like the idea that maybe a musician is somebody who tries to tell their own truth.
Well, truth is definitely one of the key words that I focus on. And as far as conspiracy is concerned, you do know that, or most people do know. I would like to hope that some people are aware that the conspiracy concept of throwing the term conspiracy theory at anything that you want to shut up has become quite a popular thing. And that was actually instigated by the CIA after the Kennedy assassination. So it's a cliche that people use when they don't want to answer you, and they want to avoid something that's an uncomfortable truth.
I mean, how do you pick out your own truth within all the other truths that are out there?
Well, the number one thing is my gut. Just like a detective will tell you, a good detective usually works on their gut because you've got all this information that you have to assemble, and sometimes your own brain can't put it together, but your stomach tells you there's something wrong, or at least this your being lets you know that there's something rotten in Denmark, and I got to get to the bottom of it. And so that's been my inspiration. I when I research things, I don't just listen to hearsay. I try and intersect the dots, put it all together, and that's the only way you can really, the truth is out there. But the thing is that there is a cabal of people that are doing things, and they'll tell you that they're doing it, but they just won't put the information together for you to do it. So all you need to do is be able to use a little bit of insight and take that information and put it all together, and then you find out. It's just it's plain as the nose on your face when the truth is screaming at you. You can't avoid it. It's as simple to me as like looking twice before I cross the road. It's if I'm going to cross the road, if there's a truck not coming, then I'm going to walk. And it's that obvious to me.
Why, speaking of trucks, I mean, why is music the best vehicle for this? I mean, you could make films, or is it because you come from a generation where music was the most powerful media we could get our hands on?
I think music has been used since the time of, at least as far as modern history, what I call modern history, is going back to Shakespeare. I mean, that was a way of communicating the anger of the population, complaining about the royalty in metaphor, and so that was because it was such an art form. Even the royals bought into it, didn't they? So John Lennon was when I realized all the things I had read about him, I realized what he was really up to, and I think that's probably even why he was assassinated. I mean, that's one of those things that I wouldn't say for sure that I believe, but it's the point that the facts seem to point to it, that it is a likely scenario that he was assassinated because he was very vocal during the time of war, the Vietnam War, and all the politics that was going on at the time, and that was exactly why they got rid of Martin Luther King. Anybody that was any dissenters were not to be, and the president himself, Kennedy, any dissenters were not tolerated. And I think we're back at that sort of place again. Right now, dissension against the cabal is something that they don't want to have, and they've got their plans for the future, their Agenda 2030, their Great Reset. They have all these plans, and they're hell bent on finalizing it.
And do you find maybe what works with music is because it creates the mood that matches the lyrics, or is that not important? You just like that kind of mood anyway.
I, for me, 90% of the time, unless I just come up with a melody, 90% of the time, the music for me is the interpretation of the lyrics. I take the lyrics and then I try to bring the emotion that, or the feeling of what those words are, and put it into music. One thing that really grabbed me, years ago, I was living in London at the time, and I was reading we were getting fan mail at that time, on paper, and there was getting people from all around the world writing things, and they were giving to me their interpretations of what this song or that song meant, and I was blown away that they didn't even speak the language, but the music is that worked. So I said, I guess I must be doing the right thing.
Oh, so you found the music went beyond the boundaries. So in a sense, that people felt what the lyrics about, not necessarily even understanding the language.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and so that's now I don't think about it consciously. I just know that it works. Sometimes the words can actually confuse people more than the music itself, because the words, it's too much for people to think about.
Mm.
This song means this to me. They grasp the meaning of the song and the feeling of the song before they even hear the words, which I think is outstanding.
It is, especially if that's your process where you start with the words, then you match the music. Is that so? That is the creative process. You start with the lyric and you make
Yeah,
the
unless of
music.
course, yeah, but I do sometimes, because I'm playing all the time, I'll come up with something and think, I'll save that for the day when I find the lyrics that fit with that, because there is a feeling about that, and it could be interpreted different things, because I'm usually thinking about all the things I write about anyway, and sometimes I'm just letting those emotions out of me through my fingers into the guitar or the piano or whatever. And then, I mean, I'm always thinking about the same thing, so it's not really a far jump for my music to fit into the lyrics anyway,
And the music it's textured and also, I would say, beautifully produced as well. It's very it's in the process. You kind of it's almost like a work of sculpture. You kind of start with the block, which is the words, then chisel it backwards till you get to the song. You actually get to the statue in a sense.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good analogy. I like that.
And then you actually produce your own records as well. So it's a
Yeah,
very fully sort of hands-on process, isn't it?
yeah, yes, definitely.
So I mean, were you always like this as well? You always somebody who thought a lot about the world. I mean, when you were growing up, were you quite a serious young man, or
Um, well, I was a rebel, but I had family members that brought to me the concept of Nostradamus when I was probably 8 years old, and it terrified me. And so I used that as a inspiration thing, but I never really could translate, even from the French, uh, the actual meanings of what Nostradamus was. But what other people's interpretations were terrified me. And I realized that people just like to sensationalize things, and you can take a line out of the Bible, you can take a line out of the weekly astrology charts, and you can interpret it any way you want. Preachers do it daily throughout the world, in front of their people, and they'll tell the people their interpretation of what this phrase in the Bible means. But I don't know.
so in a sense, even though you're seeking a truth with the music, ultimately there is no truth, is there? It's just interpretation.
Well, no, I think the truth can be convoluted by the interpretation. Truth is, like I said, truth is at the core of everything I do. I can't write about trivia. I have to write about something that means something to me. And I'm not, in spite of whatever the connotations of a band called Christian Death and what people expect from it, I'm a positive person. I try to be, I try to actually bring goodness into the world. I try to bring love without being corny. You know, In fact, I use the dark side of the world to get into people's minds, because a lot of people don't do that. They'll go straight for the love, and I don't know if I can believe half the people that want to talk to me about, I love this guy and I love the world and I want to bring peace and I want the environment to great. And, they could be just selling me something. So if I go in through the back end, then I know that I've already bypassed all the bullshit.
So it's almost like you have to embrace the dark side to appreciate the light.
Not to naturally yeah, I guess you could say that. It's just that because people are at their weakest point, because a lot of people don't want to accept the truth, and we live in a frightening world, and it's I guess I was terrified that the Russians were going to have a nuclear bomb, and that kind of went away for a while, and here we are again.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a lot of people going through what I already went through, so I understand that, and I understand what they're going through. But now it's being shrouded in more lies than ever. I mean, unless I was more naive than I think I was, it seems to me that the acceleration and the concentration of deception is just overwhelming, and that we've been able to use the internet and AI and to be able to analyze people and think tanks and to group people into groups, and the divide and conquer concept of the Romans is in full force right now to destroy the population from what they think, break down all morals, break down all standards, break down all societal norms, so that we can just rebuild it, just wipe everything out and rebuild it again our own way. But that's not the choice that we're giving as the general public. It's the elite that have these choices. It's the Bill Gates of the world that that now that they're more powerful than the robber barons. They're more powerful than the royals ever used to be. Well, maybe that's not true. I think during the Dark Ages, the royals in the church had it pretty well sewn up, didn't they? They controlled everybody, and you were a serf and you were royal, and there was no differentiation between anything in between. And so I think that's what they want to. That's why when we re-released our catalog, we called it the New Dark Age Renaissance, because they want to bring us back into the Dark Ages, the good old days of being royal and being an elitist, where everyone was your serf. Everywhere you walked, you owned.
Yeah, so it's in a sense we're still in medieval times, like a high tech digital medieval times.
Yeah, and now they're more powerful because they've got not just more control over the population, they've got more control over resources. Because this country that I'm in right now is founded on the greed of trying to acquire resources, and now it's like they can acquire resources just by clicking a mouse, and making billions, in a second, by extracting wealth and exploiting the populations of what this country or that country, Africa, for example, South America, India. Even trying to exploit China, who was sitting back waiting to be exploited so that they could turn around to become the grand exploiters.
Yeah. Learning from the masters.
Yeah, and they're very good at it.
It's interesting. Say from my perspective, somebody grew up in the United Kingdom, and you grew up. I think you grew up in California, didn't you?
Both. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as a child, you were in California, I think, weren't you?
As a young teenager.
Yeah.
Just before I joined Christian Death, pretty much is where I got involved in my California life began. I ran away from my dad. I was living in Orange County, which is south of Los Angeles, and I ran away and I ended up living in Hollywood. Sleeping on couches and meeting interesting people, and that
So
was probably
for us, for people growing up, for us, California would seem like paradise from the outside. Obviously, we were completely wrong. There's a dark side to California, and you've definitely seem to be in touch with that darker side.
Well, it's funny that you talk about going from England to California. Is that I was just talking this morning with my mechanic for my vehicle, and I was saying that Yeah, I used to live in a place called Middlesbrough in the north of England, and one summer we only had 3 days of sunlight. And then that same year, I was living with my dad in California, and it was January, and I was sitting by the pool. Wow, this is fucking great, you know.
So hold on a minute. You lived in Middlesbrough. I didn't know this
Yeah,
part.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, so did you grow up there, or did you spend some time there?
Well, because my family, my family is multinational, originally based from England. They're spread out all over Australia, South America, and other parts of Europe, here in America. So I've been shuffled around a lot. My parents split up when I was very young, so I got moved around between uncles, grandparents, and different
So
grandparents.
so is that rootlessness that does that feed into you as a person? You know that
Yeah,
yeah, in a good way, in a bad way. I guess
good.
it's
Yeah,
both, isn't it?
I
Yeah.
feel it's sort of like a blessed privilege that I had to be able to travel so much, because I could look at different perspectives and analyze things differently, you know, because, well, why is it like that in England, and why is this like here, and why is this like that, and then it gave me a good perspective so that I could balance things, because that's what I like to do. I like to, you know, like I said, connect the dots and try and understand things. And one of the, other than history itself, which the only reason I like history is because I want to understand, I guess, selfishly, humanity, because I think by trying to understand humanity, I have a better understanding of myself. And that's
So,
how I've always looked at it.
so what is your family's background then? I mean, is it
Well, my mom's a musician and a singer and a dancer. My grandfather was, my dad was a martial arts teacher, but his father was a famous keyboardist. Co-wrote one of the national anthems of Estonia. So my dad's father was Estonian.
oh, I didn't know that.
And
So
my mother's father was a keyboardist and a good singer. So music's always been in my family, and of course I have uncles and cousins and stuff like that are musicians too.
so is your background more mainly Estonian then?
No, it's English. I mean, I've never even been to Estonia. Our agent, who is English, was threatening to get us to Estonia this October. So I'm hoping that happens.
So the rootlessness kind of feeds into it. I guess in in the back with music as well. There's two things that could be going on there. One, there's a sense of community with music, but also that sense of carrying on the rootlessness by touring and being slightly out of society. Are those two things playing there at the same time?
Yeah. Well, the sense of family is very strong. I mean, my other grandfather, he's a Cockney, and but he was also I guess, you know, people used to call him a Jippo, so I don't know if he's really got the connection as far as going back to Romany, to the Romany, but there's a Romany connection in there. He was also um, he had a huge family, so it's that side. That's the side of that story. I've never really been able to get all the way to the nitty gritty of it all, but yeah, there's a lot of music influence from that side.
I mean, did you always have a sense that you yourself were musical as well from a very young age, or is that something that was sparked later on?
Yeah, well, because until, well, in the very first couple of years, my mother was still performing, and it was difficult because I was a child. She had to drag me along, so I was always at shows. You know, uh, the first thing I started playing when my first, for me, my career as a musician started when I was 5 years old. We used to live in a, um, for, we actually came here to America. I was 5 years old, and we were living in an apartment above Berkeley School of Music, literally on the second floor. That was only for like 6 months, but the she was living with her dance teacher, who was from Burundi in Africa, and he jazz ballet. He taught all this kind of stuff, but the studio was full of instruments. You know, there was guitars, there was conga drums, there was real drum kits, and the drums were the easiest thing for a 5-year-old kid to make a lot of noise on, and that's what that's where it all started for me. So I pretty much played drums until I was playing in front of audiences, and then I wanted to be, because of the girls, I think I wanted to be closer up front. So I always wanted to play guitar too, but I didn't. I didn't happen at that point. I didn't have a guitar. I didn't have access to any of that stuff until I was 13 or 14. So I was already playing in front of audiences by then. I was in a band we didn't really play anything like important, but I was playing in front of people and there were girls there, and I wanted to be closer up the front. So I said, either I'm going to be a singer or a guitar player. I still play drums. I have looking at a beautiful set of drums I have right now. I still play them, but yeah, that changed with that.
And you sort of, and this is point in time you were drifting around Hollywood as well. You gone to
yeah, it was not long after that I was actually the first band I was in. I hooked up with this these two people. I think they were from Birmingham, so we had like a connection because of the English thing, and I was playing bass. So they gave me a job as a bass player, and I was, at that time, I guess I was okay. I just didn't have the chops to be a professional bass player. And then, then I got something, I don't remember what happened with that, but I think they went back to England or something, and I started playing with other people, and I started playing other people's music, which I abhorred, with some other, but I just did it for the chops, because these people, these guys that I played with from England, they were really good, and they were always criticizing that I needed to do this and that. So I figured, well, I need to do that. So I started playing with whoever I could, whenever I could, as long as I could. Mm-hmm. And then I started trying to join bands, and there was the competition for joining bands in California at that time was pretty stiff. And I says, well, looks like the only way I'm going to be able to get into a band is if I start one myself. So I put an ad in the local paper, which was still going. It's called the LA Weekly, and then I put this band Pompeii '99 together, and that turned into Christian Death, and here we are. I've never really done anything else since.
I mean, at that point in time, the scene in LA was this kind of hardcore scene, and there's kind of and the death rock scene as well. But the death rock scene was much smaller, wasn't it? And it's like
the death rock scene was. I mean, some people were calling it post punk. It was kind of, the word death rock was being thrown around there. In fact, it wasn't until that we did a show with Specimen that Ollie said to me, you guys are quite goth.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
It's kind of convergence evolution.
Yeah. And so, but I remember we did a show in Holland once, and they're calling us country punk.
Yeah, so that's completely
different.
Then Rozz Williams asked you to. Well, you asked him to join your band, didn't you?
He joined Pompeii '99. So for 6 months before we even we were rehearsing, we were actually working on a new record, and we already had some shows because it would make connect, because we did a lot of good shows as Pompeii '99, and there's a promoter that's a really good friend of mine who does he was the original guy behind Coachella. He's the guy that started the company called Golden Voice, and so we did a lot of shows for him, and he basically took me under his wing, because he used me. I started working for him as an advisor, because he thought, well, this kid's from England, he's young, and he knows all about the music scene. I'm going to get the advice from him. So he was always, saying, well, what do you think about this band? I was on the phone. I actually booked Susie and the Banshees to come over and play. I was like 16, 17 years old. It's like, and I had their manager on the phone. I was doing all the deals, and I went and booked the Hollywood Palladium and walked in there with $10,000, and it's like, only in America, right? So then when we were rehearsing for some shows to do. We were going to play at a place called Danceteria in New York, which was a really hip club at the time. Christian Death had never been out of California, and we were pumping nine at the time. David, our drummer, said, Rozz is, because we'd met Rozz, because we'd done some shows with Christian Death before. He says, Rozz is just sitting around doing nothing. I had a conversation with him, and maybe we should get him to come into the band, because, you know, he's got his own thing, you got your thing, you know, and as a band, we have what we've got going for us, and he would be a nice addition. So that's how that worked out. And then the record company, the very first record company that we were already dealing with, knew that Rozz was joining us, and then they would determine, I'm using the word, they wanted to call us Christian Death because they had bought the rights to release in France the very first record, Theater of Pain. And so having Rozz in the band, they thought it was a no-brainer to keep us as Christian Death. He didn't want to have anything to do with that. I didn't want to give up what I was doing because it was my thing. You know, but that basically meant putting all that on the back burner, which we never cooked again. You know, so that was kind of a, you know, it was one of those situations where he was saying, "Oh, listen, I'll bring you here. We'll put you in the best studio in England," which I thought Rockfield was pretty fucking awesome, and it still is a good studio. I mean, that's where they recorded Bohemian Rhapsody. I'll put you in there, and we'll get you on a tour, and we'll give you an advance. And not everything he said came true, but that was enough for Rozz and I to go, yeah, okay, let's be Christian Death. So everything, and it's been that way ever since. I mean, it's been my whole life, whole life.
And what was your relationship like with Rozz? I mean, close friends, work buddies?
Yeah. We were. I mean, I can't be in the band with people that I don't like. I mean, when he left, he just couldn't handle the touring because it was pretty gruesome. You know, he was probably too delicate for the rigors of putting up with not eating and not being able to have alcohol, not to have cigarettes, and not have money. You know, and I didn't smoke, and I didn't really care about drinking, and I didn't need drugs, and I didn't need any of that stuff, and neither did David or anybody else that was with us at the time. And so we had a lot of determination. We were, you know, we're here for a reason. You know, we're here to work. You know, we're here to suffer and work, and that's how that pretty much fell apart. You know, we had a second tour, and he bailed before the second tour, and we went on. We just carried on. And of course, you know, there's all these people that say I did this and I did that, and I'm not going to even say what the accusations are, but none of it is true, because the fact is that I already had a band. We had offers from A&M Records, and when we had to swap to Christian Death, we knew that the name itself was already going to be a roadblock, because Pumping 99, we were trying to sell ourselves as a underground pop type of thing, you know, punky poppy type of thing. And we had A&M Records courting us. We had all kinds of major labels dealing with this at the time. When we actually decided that we were going to do it at the same time, our rep from our A&R guy from A&M Records got fired, and so that deal fell through. And I think it's because some of the bands that he was pushing just didn't cut it, and they lost money. So he got the axe. And at that point, it's like, all right, fuck it, let's just be Christian Death too. Take the money, let's go over there and do this. You know. I forgot I was talking about why that all went there.
Oh yeah, well, it's just explaining the situation with Christian Death, you know, and
and so and because it was that we were already dealing with lawyers and all that stuff, he said, if we're going to be Christian Death, we're going to do this right. We're going to register the name. We're going to, which we only did in LA. We didn't do it like it is now, international. But at that time, we just registered in LA, and we all signed contracts, and that's it. We became Christian Death, but we were jointly and severally Christian Death, which is why it was easy for Rozz. I couldn't stop him after leaving the band 5 years later that he starts using the name again. I couldn't stop him because jointly and severally, we were Christian Death. He couldn't stop me, but I couldn't stop him either, you know, because of that clause. And of course, Cleopatra Records took advantage of that, and they still do.
Yeah, because they have that catalog, don't they? And yeah. So, but you've carved out space for yourself, and you've been touring
Yeah,
it for
yeah,
years, and
yeah,
yeah. So I mean, what are the future plans? So the album came out last year, and
yeah.
you look like you're touring Europe. They see you were talking about that a minute ago, the Estonia thing.
We're
So
we haven't got the shows booked yet, but we've been saying we're trying to decide whether or not it's going to be September or October. It's getting a bit late now for September, but yeah, we're just doing the UK and Ireland this month, and then coming back to Europe allegedly at the end, the end, close to the end of the year.
and now, like, what is it? 40 years in, I guess it's about 40 years in. Did this whole thing make it more sense than it did when it started, or is you still feel like you're on the quest? You still feel like there's something to be done with this.
Yeah, I mean, since Pompeii '99, I've pretty much been trying to, say this is the world that you probably don't realize. That there is things going on in the world that you don't realize, and it's always been. I mean, even catastrophe ballet. That's what that is. It was, we at that time we were still expecting that, that there could be nukes. You know, enjoy life, make the most of it, but keep your eyes open. Pay attention. We're in the jungle. And if you want to survive, you have to, fight to survive, fight to be alive.